former communist countries, very poor countries, join the European Union with total rights of free movement, with access to our healthcare systems, with access to our education systems, and I think the penny is beginning to drop.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC. This is Phone Farage.
Here's your chance, take it.
Ukip leader Nigel Farage takes your calls with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. This is Phone Farage with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Only on LBC.
Good morning. This is Nigel Farage here on LBC. You can call me now if you want to get involved. The number is 0345 60 60 973, or you can email me at nigel@lbc.co.uk. And of course, don't forget you can watch this live by going to lbc.co.uk. So on this Friday morning, let's go straight to our first caller, and it's Herbie in Harrow. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Good morning, Nick.
Hello.
Nigel, what is this money for in the first instance, and what budgets are the government going to take it from? The NHS, the police, education, infrastructure, or can they take it from the HS2, which we don't require? Because 1.7 billion is a lot of money.
It is. Well, Herbie, the first thing to point out to people is that our membership fee to the European Union currently runs at £55 million a day. Yes, that's right. £55 million a day is what we already pay into this club. Some will argue that we get nearly half of that money back, and that's true, but the money that comes back basically goes to pay rich landowners. You know, so the aristocracy are the biggest winners, actually, out of Britain's EU membership. So, but net or gross, we're paying in a vast amount of money, and here we are having to pay in a whole load more. The means by which our EU membership fee is calculated, they're very complicated, but one of the measures is the size of our economy, the gross domestic product. And what they've done is they've reallocated the size of our gross domestic product, believe it or not, by adding in what's known as the black economy. So they put a percentage on for the drugs trade, the vice trade, etc. No, honestly, I mean, you couldn't make it up, could you?
No, certainly you could not.
We must be very prolific at it, Mr. Farage, that's all I'm going to say.
Goodness only knows. I mean, I live a very innocent life,
Indeed.
I'm sure. But of course, Herbie, you know, we also know that countries like France, frankly, are going down the tubes. So in relative terms, the size of our economy is bigger, and therefore we have to pay 1.7 billion sterling, and we have but a few days to stump it up. Mr. Cameron, one of his great claims, if you remember, was that he'd cut the EU budget at a big summit, and he came out saying, we've cut the budget. But when we looked at it, although the overall budget had been cut, Britain's contribution had gone up, and I thought to myself then, well, Mr. Cameron, if this is a victory, I'd hate to see what a loss looks like. And now we've been hammered again. So where will the money come from? Well, I'll tell you, Herbie, where it'll come from. It will go on to our ever-growing deficit, because the elephant in the room of British politics that nobody wants to talk about is this coalition was formed, and they had a plan. And the plan was that by the end of the 5 years, they would have borrowing and spending at exactly the same level. They would not be...
Do you want me to laugh my head off there?
Well, I know. And actually, we saw some borrowing figures last week indicating that the situation's getting worse. And I tell you what's staggering, but then people really don't get this. By the end of this 5-year term, under George Osborne's chancellorship, our national debt, which has been going since the time of Napoleon, will have increased by 40%. So that's how it's going to work. No doubt we'll hear some tough talk from Mr. Cameron today, and he'll say he's going to battle
He's
them.
trying to get an alliance going with the Dutch Premier, isn't he, Nigel Farage?
Yeah, but he's not going to get any support from the Germans, and the Germans rule Europe. It is a German-dominated Europe, and what Mrs. Merkel says goes.
But if Britain have benefited in the past from rebates, would it not be correct that this time, when we're doing rather well, we have to actually give more? If you look at 2012, I understand we got a rebate of £3.2 billion.
Well, yes. So
that's the rules of the game.
So therefore, our net contribution was still 8.6 billion sterling. That's over tuppence on income tax for everybody in this country.
But if we took it 2 years ago, because we weren't doing well, we took 3.2 billion 2 years ago. This year we are doing well. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with giving the 1.7 when you're doing well if you've been given 3.2 when you weren't doing so well?
Well, I tell you what, Nick, I've got a better idea. than that, why not pay nothing? Why not pay nothing? I'm quite happy to go on buying champagne or Mercedes motor cars or whatever it is we want to do, and we'll do business, and we'll go on holiday there, and we'll do student exchanges, and we'll be great mates, and that'll be wonderful. But what on earth do we have to pay a membership fee to a club who made 1,000 new laws for British businesses last year, and with whom we trade at a massive deficit? I wouldn't pay a penny. OK, let's move on to Elizabeth in Heathrow.
Oh, hello, Nigel.
Good
Hello,
morning.
Nick. I'm delighted to be speaking to you. OK, my question, statement, first of all. In 2011, Jessie J, a white singer, she picked up 4 MOBO awards, which are music of black origin, 2 of which was for Best Song and Video, Do It Like a Dude, a song which she sang in a fake Jamaican accent with lyrics such as, "We can do it like a man dem," which translated is, "We can do it like those men." Now, how does this compare with the complaints that the UK calypso is racist and has caused offence because it's sung by a white man in a fake Caribbean accent?
Well, I remember the 10cc hit, I Don't Like Cricket. Great record, 1973, still played regularly on the radio. A lot of ska music, of course, were white people using sort of pseudo-Jamaican accents. I think even Madness might have had one of their hits where they, were doing a black accent. Mike Reid has been in the radio industry probably even longer than Nick Ferrari. I mean, how about that? I know it doesn't seem possible, but there we go.
He's considerably more accomplished as well, I will say that.
But, Mike Reid has been one of the top DJs in this country, top of the pops presenter and all the rest of it. A really all-round good guy involved in charity work. I like the man very much indeed. And he made this little calypso song, and it was designed to be a bit of fun.
It was at Doncaster, wasn't it? It was
That's
first
right.
performed at your conference.
Absolutely right. He performed it after dinner. We all roared with laughter. He said, "Hey, how about we release this, have a bit of fun with it?"
Did you authorise it, Mr. Farage?
I certainly didn't veto it. And I said, "Fine, Mike, if you want to do that, that's fine. I mean, no problem at all." And so he released it on Monday, and I put it on my Twitter, and if people wanted to download it and pay for it, and then the profits would go to charity. I mean, no problem with any of that. And I think Mike and I spoke to Mike the day before yesterday, had he done this in any other context than Ukip, there wouldn't be a row at all. But because it's Ukip, people want to scream blue murder. And I tell you what gets me, Elizabeth. We've had more condemnation and outrage from left-wing commentators about Mike Reid's Calypso than we've had over the grooming and rape of thousands of young girls in the north of England. It shows a very, I think, twisted sense of priorities.
For those who haven't heard it, let's hear a little bit of it now, and you'll be interested, Nigel Farage, Nick Clegg's reaction yesterday. Mr. Clegg, can I have your view on this song?
Taxpayers' money, where does it go? Not even George Osborne knows. When we're in power and we engage, there'll be no tax on the minimum wage.
Now, that's former DJ Mike Reid.
Who's withdrawn it?
Who's withdrawn Ukip Calypso. Nigel Farage says it was a bit of fun. 160,000 people helped get it to number 1. Now it's been deemed to be racist. It warns of illegal immigrants in every town.
Listen, look, Mike Reid clearly doesn't like it anymore, so you don't have to ask my opinion. The actual person who sung it when I wants it withdrawn. I just kind of think, I don't know. I just think that's a white singer trying to sort of sing, as if he's from a sort of different culture for a party that has just gone into bed in the European Parliament with a bunch of Holocaust deniers from Poland. I just don't think it's a great look. I really don't. And I mean, it's just part and parcel of this. This kind of image of Ukip, just not really. I mean, obviously they appeal to a significant number of people in the country, but I don't think they appeal to people who want this country to remain an open, generous-hearted, diverse place.
Thus spoke a po-faced member of our current political class. No doubt, if we took Mr. Clegg's arguments there to their logical extension, we'd ban every impressionist, we'd get rid of every cartoon, of every satire, because everything we ever say or do could possibly cause offence to somebody. I think he's out of touch, and I honestly do not believe that Calypso song of Mike's caused offence. I think it was confected outrage. That is my view. OK, we're going to move on now to Len in Harlow. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Good
Hi.
morning, Nick.
Hello.
I'm probably one of the most British-minded people going. I don't even consider England a country, and I think that the Scottish government is just a glorified county council. And I'm getting really cheesed off with these people that are trying to get in. Well, they do get in from France and other places illegally, and they seem to get the soft glove treatment when they get over here. You know, keep them here, look after them, and all that. Why can't we get some sort of secured buses or coaches, keep them in the centre so we get a bus load and take them straight back?
Well,
let's listen to Mr. Farage then.
Well, then, you know, you've got to ask yourself the question, why are all those people there in Calais? And I've seen it myself. There are thousands of them trying to get to this country. Well, I'll tell you why. Because there is a very, very strong signal message that has been put out by our political leaders over the last few years. One of them, of course, is Nick Clegg, who was on this show yesterday, who just a few years ago was advocating amnesties for all illegal immigrants. And another LBC favourite, Boris Johnson, just 3 years ago, was advocating an amnesty for all illegal immigrants. Do you remember that Leslie Crowther game show, Come On Down? I mean, that's the message we're sending out. We're saying, look, come here illegally, don't worry about it, and when we catch you, we'll just say, never mind, you can stay here. And that's the message, Len, we've been sending out. I know that these people are coming because they want to better their lives, and I understand that. But we've really come to a point where we don't know within the nearest million, maybe even 2 million, how many people are actually living in our country. We've got to start sending the right messages.
On that theme, Nigel Farage, this week it was revealed there are 12,250 foreign offenders in the UK. The British government has spent £850 million last year trying to manage them. They've increased the staff from 100 to more than 900, and there are nearly 60 what are called serious harm individuals roaming unchecked in this country. What's the solution?
We have two problems. One, of course, is the famous European human rights legislation, where there are... It took us 10 years to deport Abu Qatada. 10 years of going through constant appeals. But the other problem, of course, is the EU dimension. People were very shocked with the death of that 14-year-old girl, Holly, in West London. They were shocked, not just that she was killed, but they were shocked that the man...
do you mean Alice Gross?
Gross, sorry.
Yes,
yeah.
Alice Gross, yes.
And people were very shocked that the police were chasing a Latvian man who had already served a murder sentence in his own country. Under European Union...
Who was subsequently found hanged, just to remind everybody.
Yes, he was, that's right.
Go on, Mr.
That's right. And also, since he'd been in the country, had actually been arrested for further sexual assaults. And what shocked everybody was the fact that we are not allowed, under European Union rules, to stop foreign criminals coming into this country. So I think, once again, it's one of those simple questions. We need to get a grip. And I don't want this whole argument on immigration, illegal immigrants, foreign criminals. This doesn't all have to be negative. There is a positive immigration message that we could and should be putting, that if we manage the numbers of people that came into this country and we manage the quality of people that came into this country, we would start to talk about this subject in a positive way.
All right, we move on.
OK, right. The next caller is Doug in Wales. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Nick, Nigel.
Hello, sir.
And I think the calypso was great, fantastic.
Good.
Nigel, we all know that Nigel Farage is Ukip, and Ukip is Nigel Farage. Should anything happen to you, do you think that the party has the balls to continue and go ahead?
Well, Doug, if anything happened to me, given my track record, where I've survived a major car crash, had cancer, and been through an aeroplane accident, you're quite right. Anything could happen to me.
Remind me never to travel on a train with Mr. Farage.
Absolutely. Look, Doug, you know, Ukip isn't just Nigel Farage. Ukip now is an organisation. We're just about to sign up our 40,000th paid-up member. It's an organisation with 24 members of the European Parliament. It's an organisation with 3 members of the House of Lords. It's an organisation with Douglas Carswell, MP for Clacton, who a fortnight ago, when I was last on the show with Nick, we were actually in the Clacton office.
Yes, you were.
We've got a Rochester by-election coming up in a few days' time, and our opponents try to paint Ukip out to be a one-man band. It is not. I've got a broadening team of good people around me, and so if I get knocked over by a bus when I walk out of this studio, there will be people there to take it over. And Ukip is a force in British politics, and it's not going away.
Let's do some email questions. Thank you for your call there. This comes in from Elizabeth in Leicestershire. Do you think it's possible David Cameron will simply refuse to pay by December the 1st and, sorry about this last part, and actually grow a pair? Sorry about that.
Elizabeth, whether it's this money or whether it's the question of open borders to everybody from Southern and Eastern Europe, the point is this. We signed up to a treaty. Over 40 years ago, we signed up to a treaty that's been subsequently amended. The last amendment was the Lisbon Treaty, the one that Mr. Cameron said he'd give us a referendum on and then changed his mind. We are a law-abiding nation. All the while we're members of the club, we will abide by the rules. And that's why my suggestion is that we have a different relationship, not based on politics, but based simply on trade. So the answer is, he will pay up.
Graham in Bushy, why have you formed alliances and pacts with far right-wing parties, some of whom are Holocaust deniers and have questionable beliefs? That was something that Nick Clegg alluded to yesterday.
OK, let me be clear about one thing. Everything in Europe is a compromise. You're dealing with different countries and different cultures. You know, the Labour Party sit with a Croatian party who are openly, aggressively homophobic. The Greens sat in the last European Parliament, led by a man who actually endorsed sexual relations with underage children. The Conservative Party...
Doesn't make it right, Mr. Farage.
Hang on a second. No, hang on. No.
Okay.
I will deal with this. Don't worry.
Okay.
And the Conservatives have got one of their members who's got a conviction for racism. So all across the Parliament, you get these strange alliances. My position is this. We won the European elections with the biggest UK party there, and I want our voters to have a voice in that place. That's why they sent us there. If I'm not in a group, if we're not part of a group, we won't get the speaking time. I wouldn't have got the chance, as I did this week, face-to-face with Mr. Barroso and Mr. Juncker, make some UKIP arguments. So I needed to form a compromise, which I did with one MP, not with a party, but with one MEP from a Polish party that, you're quite right, is not the kind of party that espouses the views that UKIP has. I will do what I can to keep UKIP's voice in that parliament, but not at any price. So I've made it absolutely clear.
Why did it have to be Robert Ivasovich, though?
Because there was nobody else.
Who says domestic violence would help bring wives back to earth?
Well, he did actually say that he was making that point.
The leader of the party says...
Oh, no. The leader of the party... I would not sit in the European Parliament with the leader of that party. I've made it clear. We won't sit with the French National Front. I've made it absolutely clear. So what I've done here, Nick, it's a compromise. It's not what
You don't do compromise, Mr. Farage.
Well, I could have not done this deal, and we would then have 24 UKIP MEPs effectively without a voice, and 4.5 million voters effectively without a voice. It is a very
do you
difficult
want to do
position.
a deal with someone you have to hold your nose every time you sit with them?
No, and as I said to you, I will not do this at any price. If we faced a situation,
there was no one else, Mr. Farage.
Nope.
It was the best of the bunch.
I can assure you there's far worse than that in the European Parliament, and that's one of the things, of course, that's happened, particularly with the Eurozone crisis, is we've got people like Golden Dawn, a political party from Greece, who are an avowedly neo-Nazi party. So this is difficult stuff. Whether this group holds together or not, we'll have to see. I am looking to try and get more people to join the group. Either it holds and we keep our speaking time. If it doesn't, then UKIP will be, I'm afraid, put into obscurity.
But just lastly, the leader of this particular group, I appreciate not the man you've done about. I mean, he's reprehensible, isn't he?
Oh, utterly. And I will not be sitting with him. If the choice, Nick, is sitting with that guy or obscurity, I'll choose obscurity.
All right. OK, one last email before we go back to the calls. This comes in from Simon in Kent. Does Nigel Farage think footballers are role models, and should the man from Sheffield United go play professional football again? I'm sure you don't need reminding of this.
No, I don't. No, I don't. Are they role models? Goodness me, they're just about the biggest role models for our youngsters that there is. I mean, football, in my lifetime, football's got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It is mega. And I'm afraid... Young people, too much money, things are bound to go wrong. But do I think this man should be allowed to play professional football again? No, I don't, actually. I don't. Now, let's move on. And our next caller is David in Darlington. Good morning.
dying to know I'm in Leicester.
Are you?
Sorry, my fault. That's down to me. Totally down to me. David in the home of great football, by the way. David in Leicester. Go ahead, sir.
I'm not a fan of football, so...
All right.
Hello, Nigel.
This is getting worse, this
I know.
call, isn't
I
it?
wish I hadn't said it now, Nigel.
Go on, David, go for
When
it.
you're in a hole, stop, yeah.
Nigel, I'm not a member of the BNP, but why is it you don't allow BNP ex-members into your party, given what you've just said, that you're in coalition with these Polish far-right, the Polish far-right group?
I repeat, I'm not in coalition with the Polish far-right group.
All right, well,
I've done a deal with one individual MP on whose record I could not find a single anti-Jewish comment or anything of that kind.
White beating, though. But
right, the British National Party, I'm afraid, was led and dominated for many years by a group of people who genuinely were unsavoury. You know, only had to look at people with convictions for arson and stabbing, and goodness
but
knows...
that doesn't implicate everyone in the party. On the
David, you are... you are absolutely right. I agree with you. And
people
possibly...
have been in the Labour Party
Yep.
who are now in your party. People are in the
Yep.
Conservative Party who are now in your party. Labour Party are more left-wing than any other group I know.
David...
They're all ex-communists, the leadership of the Labour
David,
Party.
I do
so why
understand...
don't you allow BNP members?
I do
Let's
understand.
hear Mr. Farage.
I do understand what you're saying, because former BNP members are welcome to join the Conservative or Labour Party, and indeed Labour have some councillors in the north of England who previously were BNP councillors. I have done everything I can to make sure that UKIP is a genuinely non-racist, non-sectarian political party. And from that platform, we can make the big arguments about what needs to be done to make this a better country. If we open the doors, as the others do, to former BNP members, we probably would get some people joining who were genuinely decent people who joined the BNP at the time because they thought it was the only possible protest. But we would also get some people who, frankly, would drag our party into the mire, and that is why I've put the ban on. And if that is seen to be a bit unfair, I'm sorry, but I've done it in the interests of getting back control of our country.
Quick response from you, David.
You had a candidate, Anne-Marie Crampton, who said World War II was engineered by Zionists and bankers to create the state of Israel. She was never in the BNP, but she has similar views to the leadership of the BNP. So why did you allow her into your party?
Oh, well, you know, there are 40,000 of them. I haven't actually, mind tested every single one of them. I've no doubt there are people in UKIP that say things, as there are people of other parties that say things that we wouldn't necessarily like or choose. David, I get your point. You think I'm being too harsh and unfair, but I've done it for a reason, and that isn't going to change. That's my decision.
Thanks for your call, David. Where do we go, Mr. Farage?
We go to South Wales and we speak to Jeff. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Thanks for taking my call. Nigel, with the forthcoming elections, how can we stop the postal ballot fraud? I stood in South Wales and I was refused to go in to canvass pensioners in their complexes and being told that the Labour had sorted things out. How can we sort out the postal ballot fraud?
How big a problem is this, Mr. Farage?
I am so pleased, Jeff, that you asked me that question. It is abhorrent. Tony Blair changed the law in 2000. The idea was that you made postal voting easier, more people would vote. And for the first 7 years of the postal voter registration scheme, you didn't even have to prove your identity to get a postal vote. Now,
grief.
Oh, no, I'm being serious. Now, one or two independent journalists have been to Tower Hamlets. All right? Where, one-bedroom flats with 12 names on the electoral roll. A lot of that's gone on. The other thing, Jeff, with postal voting is, so firstly, there's the fraud element. Secondly, there's the element where by-elections in particular can be reduced to nonsenses. I'll give you an example. The Labour MP for South West Manchester, a place called Withenshaw, died in the new year. Mr. Goggins died on New Year's Day, out jogging. There was a by-election. Nominations closed on the 29th of January, and the postal votes arrived on the 1st of February. No time for anybody else to get involved, and the turnout in some of these by-elections, over 50% of the vote are postal votes. And this is how it works. So the postman goes down the street and delivers a postal vote letter, to Mrs. Smith in number 83. Mrs. Smith is, an elderly lady on a stick, And half an hour later, there's a knock on the door from a canvasser from the party that originally signed her up to the postal vote to say, hello, Mrs. Smith, can I collect your postal vote now? What choice has she got? And I put it to you, Jeff.
That's illegal, isn't it?
No, it is only illegal if the canvasser touches the ballot paper. But if the 6'4" canvasser stands over Mrs. Smith and makes sure she fills in her postal vote, that is not illegal. And so we've now got to a position where, frankly, postal voting is leading not just to fraud, but to intimidation. And Jeff, one of my campaigns, I want the entire postal voting system scrapped. And I want to go back.
Well, hang on. What about elderly?
I want to go back to the concept. I want to go back to the concept that you get a postal vote if you're in the army, you work overseas, or you're elderly, or you're infirm. Let's go back to postal voting being genuinely what it was for, not now the mass abuse that we've got. All right, so, and that's one of the things, Jeff, I feel very strongly about. The Electoral Commission, who've been in place now for 14 years, have utterly failed in every job.
Jeff, could I just say something?
Response. Go on, Jeff.
I wrote the Electoral Commission to say that the Labour people were filling in the ballot forms, taking them back to the local council, and they said, "Oh, we're happy with that." And I thought, how can they say that?
Well,
terrible.
Well, I'm afraid the Electoral Commission is not working, and to think that this country now has a voting system that is in doubt, I think is a really bad indictment of modern Britain. Let's make it better. Thank you for that.
Thanks,
okay,
Jeff. Where do we go?
Moving on to Christian in Northolt. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. My name is Christian. I'm a Romanian coach driver working in London. I got a few questions for you. Do you know how many people live in Romania?
Let's work it out. Romania and Bulgaria, between them, 27.5 million.
Yes, so why did you say there's 29 million Romanians and Bulgarians coming here?
Well, there were 29 million Romanians and Bulgarians, but 1.5 million of them have left in the last 10 years. In fact, there's 1 million of them living and working in Italy. And what I said was this. Let's be clear, Christian, what I said. I said we're opening our doors to 29 million people from Romania and Bulgaria.
You're not. There's not even 29 million in both countries.
Well, there were.
Let's leave that aside.
You put the question to him. Let's hear the final answer.
Actually, Christian, I really rather under-egged it. What I should have said is, we now have an open door to 485 million people. There are 485 million people now who have the equivalent of my British passport. They are all welcome to come to this country. If they want to bring their children, we'll give them primary school education. If they want to come and have cancer treatment, we'll provide that for them as well. And the argument, Christian, that I'm making is I'm not against people like you from Romania in any way at all, but we've reached a point where open-door immigration is damaging the lives and prospects of millions of ordinary families in this country, and it's the duty, I would have thought, of a British government to put the interests of our own people first. So that is why I said it.
Quick second question from you, Christian.
I paid £19,000 in taxes over the last 2 years, yeah? Mm-hmm. What are you going to do with people like me once you leave the EU, for example? There's hundreds of thousands of Romanian, Bulgarians, Polish people living here already, having big, massive roots. I have children in this country. They were born here. What are you going to do with us?
Well, I'm not going to turn the clock back, and I'm not going to change anything retrospectively, because retrospective law is bad law and it's dangerous law. But what I am going to do, Christian, is I'm going to say that henceforth we do not have an open door to 485 million people. We're going to stop discriminating against Indians and against New Zealanders, which currently we have to do because of this open door. And we're going to have an immigration policy and a work permit policy that is actually rather more ethical, because it looks at the whole world, and we're going to have a policy that we are in control of.
All right, thank you for that. Let's get time for at least one more and a couple of perhaps emails as well. Where do we go next?
Miriam in Hornchurch, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. I want to know what your views are on fox hunting.
Well, I don't hunt myself, but I absolutely object to government telling us what we can and can't do. If people want to go fox hunting, that's up to them. If people want to sit in the back of a pub with a pint of beer and have a cigarette, they should be allowed to do so without excessive government interference.
In a pub?
Absolutely. I'm sick to death of government telling us what we can and can't do. Fox hunting is
what about the people that are in this country who totally disagree with the cruelty factors of fox hunting.
Well, the real cruelty
Smoking a cigarette in a pub doesn't harm anybody.
Oh, I tell you what, there's the PC Brigade would argue that it does. Miriam, the arguments over the culling of animals and cruelty, we could do a whole programme on it. What I do know is that if you cull foxes using poison, that is pretty cruel. And if you cull foxes by shooting, that's probably even crueler because you're unlikely to get the clean kill. So, I know there are people here that loathe fox hunting, and I completely understand that. But I think we should live in a free country where grown-ups make their own decisions.
Miriam, thank you. Let's try and get a couple of emails in, if I can hold you for another minute. This comes from Boris in Winchester. Could it possibly be him? I don't know. Boris says, I've just heard Nigel Farage says that the football player Chet Evans should not... I think it's Chet, actually. Evans should not get his job back. If he was a painter or decorator or bus driver, he would. How does Nigel Farage justify this?
Yeah, he's right. The questioner is right. And
Boris the emailer,
and I'm afraid that footballers are very highly paid and they are role models, and I do not think it will be a good thing or a good message to send to the nation's youth. Yes, it's unfair. Some things in life are.
All right. And you may be aware, immigration is the headline on one of the newspapers this morning. With 7 months to go before the general election, Ed Miliband will be unveiling Labour's big new idea. A response from you, Nigel?
I mean, it's beyond parody, isn't it? I mean, the party that opened up the door to 4 million people, the party that did more to drive down wages and damage ordinary working families in Britain, the party that advocated an open door to Southern and Eastern Europe with support from their Conservative and Liberal Democrat colleagues, a party that won't even give us a referendum on the subject. He's got nothing to say.
You've had plenty to say. We look forward to welcoming you again back to Phone Farage in a couple of weeks' time. UKIP leader Nigel Farage, thank you, appearing exclusively here on LBC, where news is next.
UKIP leader Nigel Farage has told LBC David Cameron will give in to the European Union's demand for an extra £1.7 billion